So today we're going to take a look at an interview from Travis Gafford with the president of esports for Riot, John Needham. And Travis is, mainly focused on League of Legends. And so, most of the interview was focused on League of Legends, but there were some things in here as well about Valorant. And so I thought I would just kind of, take out those parts that are about Valorant and we'll, talk about them as there are some really interesting things in here about like what the future of Valorant esports looks like. So if you are interested in Valorant esports, which if you're subscribed to my channel, you probably are, this is a very interesting, interview overall. And if you are interested in League esports in particular, I would recommend going back and just watching the whole thing because there's just a ton of interesting things in there about League of Legends esports and where it is and where it's going and all of that stuff. So if you're interested in League esports, definitely take a look at the whole thing. I'll leave a link in the description. But yeah, I'm just going to talk about kind of the Valorant side of this and what we've learned from it. And we'll start with, I think, what was the most interesting point here, where basically we're going to talk about, or John's going to talk about kind of the difference in the way that they approach League and Valorant esports and what they kind of see Valorant esports as. And let's dive in and take a listen.
Why do you feel that they need to be different, right? Because at the end of the day, even if the games themselves are different, they're still team matches made by Riot Games. You would think in some sense that they would not need to be so distinct from each other.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's what our fans want. So League of Legends, we know over half of our fans watch because they want to get better at League of Legends, right?
Yeah.
And they learn I would say, a lot more technical sport than Valorant is. For Valorant, very fast sport, amazing mechanics of these professional players and how quickly they can react to what's happening in game. So we very much focus more on, we want to be more of an entertainment product. It's faster, so that changes how we do the show. It's not nearly as technical as League of Legends is, right? And I don't think Valorant fans who are watching Valorant esports are necessarily watching it to get better as a player. I'm not going to get better at watching Valorant. Yeah. I will always suck.
I mean, right there with you. I don't, and to be clear, I don't think I'll get better watching League. I've watched a lot of it through the years. I continue to not be good.
Okay, let's talk about some really interesting points that were made there. And there were two that I think really stand out about Valorant, right? Let's just start off with the big one, for me, at least. The one that when, John said this, my ears kind of, just perked up and was like, hold on a minute, what did you just say? Because he talked about how, most people who are watching Valorant aren't watching to get better, or that you won't get better from watching Pro Valorant. You might be shocked to hear this, but I, of course, majorly disagree with that take, because if I was to list the reasons that I made this channel, literally number one on the list, number one, would be that I learnt about Valorant from watching pro games. And so I thought, well, maybe I can teach people the things that I've learned from watching pro games and, the things that I've picked up from just watching, right? Because, and I would say to anyone, one of my tips, if you want to get better at Valorant, one of the main tips I would give people is watch pro games. Because you will get better at Valorant by watching pro games. I guarantee it. Now, I think what John might be talking about here is that technical element, right? The aim, the movement side of things. Sure, if you can watch Yay, tap heads all day, right? That doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it. Just hit their head, idiot, yeah, we could all just say that. Sure, you're not going to get better at just that, right? But there are even parts of that you can get better at, right? For instance, Yay with a Vandal at range started ADSing, and no one else was at first. It was just Yay. And then other pros started doing it as well. And now a lot of people start doing it. And now I do it as well. If you're at long range with a Vandal, I think you should ADS and tap like Yay. Now, I don't know the full dynamics of is it truly better, but Yay does it and finds a lot of success with it, and then other pros started doing it and finding a lot of success with it, and so then I started doing it, and I find, that it is a bit easier in general if you just kind of, burst, tap, ADS, try and just, really aim at that head and focus on that as your only real goal at long range with a Vandal. Yeah, that's something that I've learned from a pro game that I otherwise wouldn't have done. Right? And that's just one example in aim. Obviously, when it comes to other parts of the game, I mean, utility is obvious, right? Lineups, for one. just absolutely, just copy lineups from pros, right? Just super obvious stuff, right? But even how you use utility, right? For instance, yesterday with my friends, I was playing Viper on Bind. Every single round, what am I doing? I'm doing that old Viper setup that every pro team does that is still meta to this day, right? On towards A short and whatnot. Just doing that same Viper setup over and over every single round. We won every round on attack on Bind. How many times have you won every single attack round on Bind? Doesn't happen often, right? But our opponents had no idea how to deal with that Viper setup, right? We would just walk as a 3 or 4 stack just down short, and someone would just randomly run through my Viper setup, and we just kill them, and we'd be in on site, and we get the spike down, we win the round, right? That happened so many times. And the only reason I'm doing that Viper setup every single round is because all the pro teams do it, and I know that it's super strong from watching all those pro teams do it, right? And that there isn't really an answer to that as the defending side. So you can learn stuff like this, right? That's just one example, but you go through every map. You can learn what agents are good on maps, right? How you should use those agents on maps, where the best places for their utility is, all of that stuff, right? You will learn it from pro teams. Where to even simple stuff, where to plant the spike on each site, right? Just things like that, where the best places, all of those things, are things you can learn from just watching pro games. And it doesn't take, a rocket scientist to, figure some of this stuff out. It is pretty basic stuff a lot of the time. And so that is one thing that I was kind of like, oh, I don't know if I agree with that. Now, maybe it's not to the same extent that League is, right? I don't watch League, I don't play League, I don't know, right? Maybe it's not to the same extent, and that's fine. But I think that definitely, I wouldn't agree with the statement that you don't really learn much from watching pro games of Valorant. The second thing that I think is really interesting, though, is the idea of Valorant esports going forward and becoming an entertainment product rather than something that, you learn from. Now, this I don't necessarily disagree with. I actually think that this might be a good thing overall for Valorant. I would kind of put it on a spectrum of chess to F1, right? Most people who watch chess are watching, top-level chess games in the hope of learning something, right? An opening, or what you should do in a certain, position or whatnot, right? That is why I think most people watch high-level chess. People who watch F1 aren't hoping to become better drivers, right? Very few people in the world are ever going to drive an F1 car, and it's meaningless, right? You only watch it for the entertainment value of watching people race in these very fast cars. There's nothing to be gained in terms of things that you could learn about really anything there. So that would kind of be the spectrum to me of the two extremes of what's going on, and I would put Valorant and League somewhere in the middle. I don't think they're that close to the extremes. Maybe League is more towards chess and Valorant is more towards F1, but I don't really think they're anywhere close to those extremes, and I think they do exist more in a middle ground overall. But we can think about that idea of it becoming an entertainment and think about, well, that's probably what the focus for Riot is going to be then. If they see this as an esport that they want to be, an entertainment product first and foremost, what does that really involve? What kind of things then will they be looking to drive? Well, when you think of like entertainment products versus, something more technical where you're trying to learn, obviously for an entertainment product, you're often talking about storylines and building those kind of things up. And we'll get into this a bit later with some of the other things that John said as well. But I think, that building of kind of storylines, of getting to know the players, getting to know the teams, getting to know the storylines of what's going on, and keeping people engaged, right, with what's going on, and kind of living it like a little, like a little ongoing drama, right, that unfolds throughout the year. That is what I think that they are, really trying to get at here. Okay, the second part that I think, again, you'll find this really interesting overall is John here talking about the difference in the kind of partnership leagues that they have for League of Legends and Valorant, right? So League of Legends is a kind of you buy-in system, and then once you've bought your spot, you're pretty much there. Whereas, for Valorant, obviously, you aren't buying in. But let's take a look at what John is kind of saying about these two different kind of approaches.
Learnings out of the League of Legends partnership system and applied that to Valorant. And I think we architected a very modern approach to partnership with Valorant. So with League, we had the teams buy their slot, they bought in. It's not permanent. There are evaluation periods in that partnership. But it really didn't truly align us with teams. And it manifests itself in a couple of ways. So, one of the things you see is generally in our big leagues, you have teams that are really high-performing teams, and then you have a set of teams that are really low-performing teams, and they're not really investing in their roster, or they're not really investing much back in the sport, right? I don't think that's a healthy way to set up a sport. So with Valorant, it's not that the slots are free, that we gave the slots away. The teams are actually obligated to do a certain minimum amount of marketing every month to give us marketing materials every month that we can put on air to support their team and their stars. They're required to develop talent as part of the partnership. They're required to go out and get sponsors and do things. These are all good things for the ecosystem. So as long as they're doing those things, they're investing in their team, they're investing in the marketing of their team, they're giving us content we can use on broadcast, they will keep their slot. If they stop doing those things, we'll have an evaluation about whether we want to keep in partnership with them.
So, very, very interesting things, right, going on. And I mentioned this as soon as the kind of, partnership model was announced, that the whole idea behind, people not paying to get in is the idea that Riot has the power, right? Riot can kick out any of these teams at any point, I think. They would be stupid not to have in the contract, oh yeah, if we decide that you aren't doing all the things, if you're breaching this contract for all these things we've put in here, we can get you out and swap you with a different team. Like that, if we want. That's what I would have done if I was Riot, because you're not paying, right? Whereas when you are paying to get in, the power is kind of with the teams to do whatever they want then, right? So this is a way of essentially saying, you need to be committing to this, otherwise you're out, right? Straight away. Which I think is going to be good, right? So the whole idea behind the system is basically to stop that idea of people not really trying overall, right? And Riot can really threaten these teams to be like, you will be gone if you don't do all of this stuff. And also you've got that kind of, they need to be marketing, right? They need to be getting sponsors. They need to be, doing all these things that are going to help build this ecosystem. Again, I think that is just going to help overall with creating this kind of healthy, entertainment product that they are trying to go for, right? They want all these marketing things. They want all these little video clips of all the players and getting to know the players and building. They want the teams to help build those storylines, I think, so that they can turn this into, a very big entertainment product. And then let's just end with 2 quick points here. One is about the kind of formats. So, Travis basically was talking about the frustration a lot of League fans have with single elimination, and John responded by basically saying, look, we think that, Worlds for League is this massive event, and the biggest events in the world should have, the highest stakes, and the highest stakes is single elimination. Therefore, we want it. So correctly, then Travis, asked back, well, if Valorant becomes big, does that mean that will become single elimination? Here is the response.
Yes.
Should Valorant fans be panicking right now? Because if they get big enough and to the size and their events start to become the size and scope of Worlds,
yes,
it sounds like they based off the philosophies you have, they might have to move to single elimination, because then it'll become one of the major sports in the world, right?
Well, we are not considering single elimination for Valorant, so I'll be very clear about that. But we do always talk about formats and always talk about what's best for the event. So it's not inconceivable that we go to a single elimination with Valorant at some point. But it's
okay. There you go. Straight from the mouth. Double elimination is here to stay for now. But maybe in the future, who knows? And I know that this will bring up a lot of people who don't like, one or the other and prefer, single limb or double limb, whatever it might be. Obviously, they both have their pros and cons, but, there you go. That's maybe what the future looks like. And then finally, the last thing I want to mention is about co-streaming as well, and kind of the difference between League of Legends co-streaming, which is kind of a very niche, non-existent almost form for that esport, whereas obviously in Valorant, co-streaming is like a massive, massive part of it. And in fact, John, said at one point that, there are some events in Valorant where 50% of the viewership is, co-streaming stuff. And so let's just quickly touch on this.
So this year for Worlds, we wanted to experiment with co-streamers. We wanted to start with a handful, like we did for Valorant a couple years ago, and see what happens with it. We've done co-streaming around LCS. It hasn't driven the level of viewership that we wanted, or that we've received from Valorant doing co-streaming. So hopefully we'll see with this experiment at this Worlds that we're drawing incremental audience to watch Worlds. And that's really at the end of the day what we want to do with co-streamers. We think these streamers reach a segment of audience that we just wouldn't reach otherwise. Yeah. So we are so on the co-streaming bandwagon. when we've done these experiments and we can figure out how to optimize the experience for people watching, we're going to do a lot more. We love it. We think we've introduced a whole new dynamic in viewing sports with co-streaming.
Okay, so what I all need you to do then is anytime you interact with a Riot employee, just say, I wouldn't be watching pro Valorant games if it wasn't for TMV. I am there solely for TMV, and he is the only reason I watch it, right? If you could all do that, that would do me a solid, just to kind of, maybe bump my status up in the kind of, world with Riot. But yeah, it seems like co-streaming is definitely here to stay for Valorant, because it is just such a kind of fundamental part in how we view this esport. And so that is the kind of reaction to this interview. If you are a fan of League of Legends, by the way, and the esport of League of Legends, definitely go and give the whole thing a watch, because there's a lot in there about League of Legends that obviously we've skipped over here. But, if you are a fan, definitely go and take a look, because Travis does it's a great interview, to be honest. It's a great interview. There's a lot to learn if you are interested in League as well. Link is in the description. I hope you found this, somewhat interesting, and there were some answers given there. Yeah, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.